This video is about affixes. What do I mean by affixes? Affixes are the generic term for a letter or a group of letters that we attach at the beginning of a word or at the end of a word. They are often used to create new words. The words to which the letter or group of letters are attached to are called root words. But I will call them, in this video, the main words. The main words are the most basic forms of the words. For example, what is the main word in unthinkable? Unthinkable. What's the main word in that word? The most basic form of unthinkable is think. Think is the most basic form. So it is the main word. Before think, we've got un. Un. Un is what we call a prefix. Goes before prefix. What's after unthinkable is able. And able is at the end. And at the end, we call it a suffix. Prefixes and suffixes are not words as such, because they don't stand on their own. They are used with other words to change their meaning. The prefix un, does not stand on its own. But when added to a main word, it changes the meaning of that word. So adding un to fair changes the meaning of fair. Changes the meaning of fair according to the rules to the meaning of not according to the rules. So fair according to the rules, unfair not according to the rules. Having said that, we've got some exceptions like able or in. Able or in could be main words, but they can be used as prefixes or suffixes to change the meaning of the word. Full is another one, except that full as a main word, F-U-L-L, like my bag is full of pepper, is different from the suffix full. The suffix full is F-U-L, just one L. So full as a main word has two L's, but full as a suffix has just one L. If you look at the Collins English Dictionary of the definition of in, so this is a copy of the page of in from the Collins English Dictionary. You can see on the top you've got in as a main word, just in on different definitions of in. And then below it you can see in with a hyphen, in hyphen or hyphen in. Now in hyphen is for the prefix. Hyphen in is for the suffix. And this is how prefixes and suffixes are shown in dictionaries. There is an hyphen before or after the word to show if it is a prefix, to be after, or a suffix, to be before. Because where the hyphen is to show that that hyphen is like a hook that goes into another word. You can also see in the dictionary with the prefix in, we've got other variants like il, im, or ir, and all with a hyphen to show that il hyphen, im hyphen, ir hyphen are like in hyphen. They are prefixes. I will explain these variants later. Adding prefixes or suffixes, or both, because you can have both as in unthinkable, to a word changes the meaning of that word, and as such we get a new word. There are many prefixes, many suffixes, and I will not go through all of them because there are just too many. I will go through some of the most common affixes to actually explain them, but especially to explain how they could change the spelling of a word. Because knowing suffixes and prefixes helps with spelling, especially with suffixes. Now, let's have a look at prefixes. Let's have a look at some of the most common prefixes. If you don't agree with someone, what prefix, or these letters, would you add before agree to add the meaning of not agreeing, to add the opposite of agreeing? What would be the prefix you add before agree to mean the opposite? And the answer is this, dis. disagree. If you add dis, this, to agree, we get disagree. When you disagree, you don't agree. You find this dis in many other words. It is such a common prefix, dis, this. You find it in dislike, dismount, disorder, or even dissimilar. Dissimilar. What is the main word in dissimilar? Look at dissimilar. The main word is similar. Similar is the main word, and we added the prefix this before similar. By adding this before similar, we end up with two S's in dissimilar. The last letter of this, which is an S, and the first letter of similar is also an S. If you put them together, we've got two S's. So dissimilar has two S's. And that's true for any other word starting with an S. If you add this before, you end up with two S's for that new word. So, as you can see, knowing prefixes does have a spelling. Now you know that dissimilar has two S's because we added this to similar. In most cases, you only need to add a prefix. The spelling of the prefix or the spelling of the main words, they don't change when you just add the prefix. In most cases, because not always, we've got a few exceptions. Let's go through other examples of prefixes. If you have not understood something properly, what prefix do you add to understand? The answer is miss, M-I-S, as in misunderstand. Miss is another common prefix that you use. You find it in misheard, misfortune, misuse, or even misshape. And again, misshape, shape, that we add miss before, we end up with two S's. M-I-S, S, H-A-P-E, misshape. What prefix do you add to the word comfortable if you are not comfortable? So if you are not comfortable, you add the prefix un, U-N. Un is another very common prefix. You find it in uncomfortable as well as unwashed, untidy, or unnatural. And again, unnatural has two N's because I've got the word natural and I did a prefix that ends with an N, so we end up with two N's. Another common one. What prefix do you add to a skirt to say that it is small? A mini skirt. Mini. Mini is another common prefix you find, as in mini skirt, mini computer, mini bus, or even mini invasive. Now, can you see what I've done with mini invasive? Mini hyphen invasive. I use a hyphen here between the prefix and the main word. Sometimes with prefixes, it is better to have a hyphen. It is possible not to use a hyphen, mini invasive, but it's not common. Mini invasive is commonly written with a hyphen. Why? It's because it's more difficult to read mini invasive without an hyphen compared to with an hyphen. With mini invasive, it's easier to read it with a hyphen. Another common prefix is extra, as in extracurricular, extraordinary, extramarital, or even extraaxial. And again, as in with mini invasive, extraaxial, we've got a hyphen. Extra hyphen axial. For the same reason that it is easier to read extraaxial with a hyphen than it is without. It does look strange to have extraaxial without a hyphen because we are not used to have words with two A's side by side. Can you think of any words that have two A's side by side? There are not many. There's the name, Aaron, or the animal, Advakt, but cannot think of any more. That could be any more, but it's not something common, really not. So we tend to spell that word with a hyphen. A very common prefix, probably more common than all those we have seen so far, is the prefix re, R-E, as in redo, rethink, reinstate, or even reinforce, not to confuse with reinforce. Now see how the hyphen in reinforce actually helps distinguish that word from reinforce. There are two different words. Reinforce and reinforce do not have the same meaning. two different words. But the hyphen here in reinforce does actually distinguish that word from reinforce. There is another situation that using a hyphen is a must. Look at these two words. This one and this one. How do you say that one? And how do you say that one? There are two different words, two different meanings. That one in one word is resign. So when you leave your job, you resign. That one with a hyphen is resign. Signing, so you sign a document, you may need to re-sign the document. So sign it again. So the hyphen in resign shows that re is the prefix and sign the main word. Resign again. Compared to resign, the re in resign is not a prefix. Resign is a full word. Resign is a main word. You can, if you resign again, then you can re-resign. So you resign once, you go back to the company and you decide to leave again, so you re-resign. And re-resign, we will tend to spell it with a hyphen, R-E hyphen resign. So resign is the main word. And resign, in resign is a prefix. So here, we do need to have a hyphen for resign, otherwise we could confuse that word with resign. And it is the same between reform and re-form. Re-form, re here is a prefix, so you form again. Reform, you form again. Compared to reform, changing things, spelling reform, reformation. These are instances where a hyphen is needed when you add a prefix. There is one exception, when the spelling of the prefix will change depending on the first letter of the main word, and that's with the prefix in. Earlier, I mentioned the dictionary that shows you the prefix in with il, im, ir, and that's because in will change depending on the first letter of the main word. What do I mean by that? Well, if the main word starts with a B, in becomes im. So the main word balance starts with a B, but we wouldn't say in balance, we would say im balance. Imbalance. If the main word starts with an M, same thing. In becomes im. So mobile becomes immobile. Not immobile, but immobile. Same thing with a P word. If the main word starts with a P, then it will be im. Impossible. Not in, but im. Impossible. If the main word starts with an L, then it will be il. So it's not illogical, it is illogical. I-double-L. Illogical. And same thing with the main word starting with an R. So it's not irresponsible, it is irresponsible. It's IR. The N changes to an R. I-double-R, responsible. So that's why you've got in immobile or illogical or irresponsible two M's or two L's or two R's. The end of the prefix N changes to an M or to an L or to an R. We do have some exceptions. Usually when the meaning is in, into, on, or within, rather than the opposite of. I say usually because it's not always the case, because immigration, for example, immigration, in here is not the meaning of the opposite of. Immigration is coming into the country. So it's not always true. But if you look at these exceptions, you do have that feeling of in having the meaning of in, into, on, or within. So if you look at this table actually summarizes that rule about in, changes into either an M, an L, or an R. And you can see at the bottom as well some exceptions when well, it doesn't change. It's just inborn or inmate or input and so on and so on. There are many other prefixes. Okay, many of them that I'm not going to go through, like pre, post, anti, non, inter, and so on and so on and so on. But if you know what the prefix is, if you can identify the prefix, then you can just add the prefix to that word unless it is a prefix in. But do remember that some words would require a hyphen, especially if the final letter of the prefix is the same as the first letter of the main word. So these are prefixes. Now let's have a look at suffixes. Suffixes are attached at the end of the main words. We distinguish two different types of suffixes, the lexical ones and the inflectional ones. The lexical suffixes are used to make new words. So able attached to adapt, we get adaptable. We've got a new word, adaptable. Ly attached to love, we've got lovely. Diom attached to king, we've got a kingdom, new word. Full, ful, remember the suffix full just has one L. Ful. If you attach it to hand, we get handful, another new word. The inflectional suffixes are used to change an aspect of the word. So the meaning is not really changed, but what is changed is something else. For example, if you add the suffix s, because s could be a suffix, to a noun, then we get a plural. So a house, one house becomes houses. Flower becomes flowers. Computer, computers. Car, cars, and so on and so on. So adding the suffix s to these words tells you that it is the plural. So it doesn't change the meaning, it just says instead of just having a single one, you've got more than one. Ed with verbs, if you add ed to verbs, to most of them, I say most because there are some exceptions, but to most of them, you get the past. So listen becomes listened in the past. Walked, washed, invaded, painted. When you add ed to these words, we get to past tense. Now we do have exceptions, like the past of go is not good. The past of go is went. The past of be is not bid. The past of be is was or were, and so on and so on. So there are some exceptions. But in most cases, adding the suffix ed gives you the past to a verb. We also have ing. So when you add ing at the end of a verb, it's like an action that has started but has not finished. So when I say, I am talking, I'm still talking. I am singing, I'm still singing. I am walking, I'm still walking. Having said that, we can turn a verb into a noun by adding ing. So I could say painting is a great hobby. Painting is a great hobby. Painting has become a noun in this situation. When you add a suffix to a word, spelling could be affected. And that really depends on, well, the main word. There are different types of changes that could happen depending on the main words. Now, for simplicity, I will use the term vowel suffix when the suffix starts with a vowel. Okay? So a vowel suffix, when I say vowel suffix, it's not just a suffix made of vowels. When I say vowel suffix, it is a suffix that starts with a vowel. I'm just using that term for simplicity's sake. So a vowel suffix starts with a vowel, and a consonant suffix starts with a consonant. Now, when I say vowel suffix, let's be clear about one thing. What are the vowels in the alphabet? Well, the vowels in the alphabet are A, E, I, O, U, and Y. Y could be a vowel as well. Y could be a vowel when it has the sound E, for example, or even the sound I, as in by, B-Y, it is a vowel here. But with a suffix, it's mostly with the sound E. For example, there is a suffix with just the letter Y. Just that letter Y. There is a suffix. If you think about it, sleep, if you add Y to it, we get sleepy. Same thing with ice, we get icy, mess, messy, thorn, thorny, and so on and so on and so on. So in sleepy, we've got the sound E for that Y letter. So Y here is a vowel. So it is a vowel suffix here. And a consonant is any other letter that is not a vowel really. Now, let's start with our changes of spelling when you add a suffix. Let's start first with the plural of nouns. Plural means more than one. So when you have more than one house, you have houses. You just add an S. But it's not always that straightforward with some words. It works with computer, it works with chair. We only add an S to get computers, to get chairs. But with other words, it is different. So if your word ends with either S, double S, or X, or Z, or CH, or SH, or even O, then you don't just add an S, you add ES to these words. Words that end with an F or FE, they tend to change to VES. So the F or FE becomes VES when you make this word in the plural. If your word ends with a consonant followed by a Y, so consonant Y at the end of the word, then the Y changes to YES. We do have some exceptions, and the exceptions is when the word, the main word, ends with a vowel followed by a Y. So if your main word is vowel Y at the end, you just add an S. Another situation is, well, some singular words end with an S, especially IS, like basis. We do have some irregular plural. There are words that do not follow that pattern at all of adding a suffix at the end, like child, children, ox, oxen, foot, feet, tooth, teeth, goose, geese, man, men, woman, women. The interesting thing with the plural of some foreign words, so words that have been taken from other languages, like a cactus. Cactus has an irregular form, could be cacti, so one cactus, two cacti with an I. But we tend now to actually follow the English pattern of for cactus adding ES, because cactus ends with an S, and when the word ends with an S, we add ES, so cactuses. So words of foreign origin could have two different types of plural form, either the foreign form cacti, or let's say the English form cactuses. Now, for your information, when we talk about plural words, what happens with hyphenated words? A hyphenated compound is a word made of other words and separated by hyphens, like a sister-in-law. Now, if you marry someone and that person has a sister, then his or her sister becomes your sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, we've got three different words to actually name that person. So sister-in-law is actually one word as represented by the hyphen. Now what happens if you have more than one sister-in-law? Well, if you have more than one sister-in-law, it becomes sisters-in-law. So if your compound word has a noun, then you add the S to the noun. So in sister-in-law, sister is the noun, you add S to sister, sisters-in-law. Same thing with brother, brother-in-law, brothers-in-law. If your compound word doesn't have a noun, then we put an S on the last word. So go between, go is a verb, between is a preposition. It's not a noun. So a go between in the plural would be go betweens. Something with take off. Take off, take offs. Because take and off are not nouns. So that's how it works with these hyphenated compounds. Now, we have just gone through how to form the plural with nouns, and I mentioned nouns ending in Y. When they end in Y, they change it to YES for the plural. However, it's not just nouns ending with Y. You do have verbs or adjectives ending in Y as well. So verbs like cry or copy, and adjectives like easy or dry. Although dry could be a verb as well. So what happens when you add a suffix to them? Right, well, it depends if the suffix you mention is a vowel suffix or a consonant suffix. Now let's have a look at this table. And this table sums up the changes when you add a suffix at the end of a y-ended word. Now, when I say y-ended, exactly like with nouns, it depends if it is ended in y, consonant y, or vowel y. If it is consonant y, it's different from vowel y. So, with consonant y, if you add a suffix, then that y changes to an I. For example, cry, cries, cried, or copy, copies, copied. There is an exception to that, because if you add ing, well, it's still a y, it doesn't change to an I. So when you say cry, cries, cried with an I, if you add ing, it will be crying. So that's our exception with these verbs. With adjectives, the y changes to an I if it is consonants plus y and you add a suffix. So easy becomes easier with an I or easily with an I. There are some exceptions. I mentioned the ing exception. You just add ing for the verb. For the adjectives, the exception are dryness, dry, the dryness, the y stays a y. Shy, shyness or shyly, the y stays y. Sly and slyly, again, the y stays y. So these are the exceptions for adjectives. Now, what happens if the word ends with a vowel followed by a y? So vowel y, and then you add a suffix. Well, nothing, you just add the suffix. So convey, you add ed, will be conveyed. You add ing, could be conveying. You add ance, it will be convenience. Doesn't change. We do have some exceptions, like, well, pay. You add ing becomes paying, so that's fine, you just add ing. However, in the past, it's not paid, it's paid, P-A-I-D. Same thing with say. Say, saying, no problem, you just add ing, but in the past it is said, S-A-I-D. So, paid, said are exceptions. Another exception is with gay. When you add li at the end of gay, gaily, it's G-A-I-L-Y, even though it is a vowel followed by a Y. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you a table. I would like you to have a look at how the words of the left column compare with the words of the right column. As you can see, a pattern. So you've got the main word, here is the table, and that table you can see on the left column, we've got fat and hope. And then you can see that when I did a suffix, the final letter doubled. However, in the right column, I've got fate and hope. But here, when I did a suffix, the final letter didn't double. What happened? Can you see the pattern? Do you know why? Right, why? Here is the pattern for the words on the left column. Fat and hope. If you have a one-syllable word, and it has a short vowel. And what I mean by a short vowel, it's the difference between a ship, the boat, and sheep, the animal. Sheep, short vowel, E sound. Sheep is a bit longer for the animal. That would be a long vowel for the animal, sheep. So we've got a short vowel with hop compared to hope. Hope is not a short vowel, it's what we call a diphthong. Now, if it is one syllable with a short vowel, and you add a consonant suffix, no changes. Okay? You just add ly to man, for example, manly, or ns to hopes, no changes at all. The change happens when you add a vowel suffix. When you add a vowel suffix to a one-syllable word with a short vowel, the final letter doubles. So fat becomes fatten with two T's and fatter with two T's. And hope, two P's, or man, mant with two N's, manning and manish. Now, what happens with the words on the right column? These words on the right column ended with an E. And that's the thing. What happens with words with end with an E? Do we keep the E or do we drop it when we add a suffix? Well, it depends on different situations. If you add a consonant suffix to a word that ends with an E, then you keep the E. The E stays there. So you got fate, full. Hope, hopeful, hopeless. Sincere, check that spelling. And when you add the suffix li at the end, you get sincerely, as in yours, sincerely. So it's ly at the end. So if you look at that table, you can see on the left column, I put manage, and then add ment at the end of management, and then I put a star here. Why did I put a star here? It's because we've got an exception. Because manage ends with GE. And that exception is at the bottom middle column. I'll get back to that one in a moment. The exceptions otherwise for that rule about adding a consonant suffix and to keep the E is with the word argument. Ment is a consonant suffix, but the E is dropped here. Argue, argument. Hate becomes hatred. True, truly. No E's. Ninth. No E. These are the exceptions. Right, what happens when you add a vowel suffix? Well, when you add a vowel suffix, the E is dropped. So hope becomes hoping without an E, and hoped without an E. Because in hoped, you add the suffix ed. So the E of hope is dropped, and you just add ed to it. Become becomes becoming, and so on. Manage become managing, no E. Service, services, no E. Now, we do have an exception with manage and service, because these words ends with GE and CE. So, what's the exception here? If your word ends with C or GE and you add a suffix OUS or the suffix able, you keep the E. So, manage becomes manageable with an E. Service becomes serviceable with an E. You just add the suffix, you keep the E for these words. And outrage becomes outrageous, and the E is kept. There is a reason why we keep the E here. And the reason is, how do you read the word if we don't put an E? So, manageable, for example, how would you read manageable without an E? Well, strictly speaking, you will read it as manageable. G-A has a G sound. Gable. And that's the issue. Because in English, we do have some rules in relation to the combination of letters, how they should be said. G-A as in garage has a G sound. So because GA has a G sound, to say that we need a J sound, because it is manageable, not manageable, but jable, we keep the E. GE here is a way to say we've got a G sound. It is the same with the C. CA has a K sound, cable, car. So because CA has a K sound, with serviceable, we need a S sound, not a K sound. So we need to keep that E here. The last situation is words ending in YE or EE or OE. With these words, it's easy. You just add the suffix, no changes. So eyeing, we keep the E at the end of I. Same with agree, tiptoe, or shoe. We have one exception, and that's with shod. Shoe, but shod. S-H-O-D. Let's have a look at another list of words. And let's see if you can see the pattern between these two lists of words. Here at the table, you can see on the left column, we've got sit and ship that I mentioned earlier. And the right column, we've got a seat and sheep. Now, what's the pattern here? Why do we double the final letter with sit and sheep, but not with sit and sheep. What happens here? Right, well, the words sit and sheep work exactly in the same way as in fat and hop that we had earlier. Sit, sheep, one syllable with a short vowel. If you remember what I said earlier, if it is one syllable, one short vowel, then we double the final letter. So 2 T's for sit, sitting, sitter, and 2 P's for ship, shipping, shipper, but shipment. Now if you remember, if you add a vowel suffix, then you double the final letter. But if you add a consonant suffix, you don't double the final letter. So shipment, you just add ment and that's it. Because shipment, ment, is a consonant syllable in that it starts with a consonant M. Now if you remember, if you add a vowel suffix, you double the final letter. So shipping 2 P's, shipper 2 P's. But if you add a consonant suffix, like ment, then no doubling. You just add the consonant suffix. That's it. So shipment, just 1 P. So we already had a look at the rule regarding one syllable, one short vowel. What happens in this second column? Well, when we had a short vowel with sit and ship, we had a long vowel with sit and sheep. And when we have a long vowel, then it's a bit different. Here is the pattern, here is the table with the pattern. One syllable with a long vowel, or one syllable with a double vowel. What I mean by a double vowel is when you've got 2 vowels side by side, like oo or e. So if you add a consonant suffix, well, you're happy to know there's no change. Consonant suffix is just add it. Like fear becomes fearless, fearful. We don't double the final letter. And look become looks, sit, sits, no changes. So what happens when you add the vowel suffix? Well, what happens is, well, it's like the consonant suffix. You just add the suffix, you don't double the final letter. So sit becomes sitting, seated, sheep, sheepish, look, looking, looked. You just add a suffix. So with a one syllable long vowel or one syllable double vowel, there is no change, just add a suffix. Much easier than with the other situation of one syllable short vowel. Let's be clear about one thing. Let's be clear that when I say one syllable word, I mean the main word as one syllable. The main word as one syllable. So the main word sit, for example. Sit are just one syllable. And the final letter is doubled when you add the vowel syllable to it. So sitting, S-I-T-T-I-N-G. Okay? Sitting. But that rule doesn't change if you add a prefix to it. Because obviously if you add a prefix to it, we get more than one syllable. But that doesn't matter because I'm just talking about the main word. So resitting, for example, resitting, we still have 2 T's. Because the main word of resitting is sit. Sit. When you add ing to sit, we get sitting with 2 T's. And when you add the prefix, we get resitting. The rule doesn't change. Just add a prefix. Now, I mentioned words with one syllable. What happens if your words have more than one syllable? Well, we've got a different situation. Let's have a look at another 2 lists. And let's see if you can see the pattern. Here is our table. I actually underlined a syllable to actually help you see the pattern. So look at this table. Can you see the difference between the left list and the right list? Well, the difference is where the stress is. So here is the pattern. If you look at this table, you can see you've got on one hand stress on the final syllable and on the other hand stress before the final syllable. So let's have a look at words where the stress is on the final syllable. When the stress is on the final syllable and you add a vowel suffix, you need to double the final letter. So when I say the stress is on the final syllable, it means like I say begin. Begin. Can you hear the difference? Begin, refer. I don't say begin or refer. It's begin or refer. So the stress here is on gin or fer. So in this case, we double the final letter. So beginning, beginner to ends, referred, referring, referral to are. If we had a consonant suffix, we don't have any change. Okay, you just add the suffix with a consonant suffix. Now what happens if the stress is before the final syllable? Like in benefit, benefit, or focus. Focus, not focus, it's focus. So if the stress is before the final syllable, there's no change. You just add the suffix and that's it. No doubling of letter. Easier. That means, however, that you need to know where the stress falls in these words to find out if you need to double the final letter when you add a vowel suffix or not. I give you one final task. Just one final task. And see if you can see the pattern. On the left hand side, cancel, control. And on the right hand side, cool, snarl. Do you understand the pattern here? Right, here's the pattern. So we've got our table again. Words that end with an L are a bit tricky because all these are just L words, L-ended words. All these are just L-ended words. So what happens with L-ended words? Right, if your word ends with a single vowel followed by an L and you add a vowel suffix to it, then you need to double the L. So single vowel plus L plus vowel suffix, double it, as in cancel, cancelled, cancellation, control, controller, controlling, install, installed, installation. We've got one exception, and that's parallel. Paralleled, we don't double the L for that one. That's one exception. If instead of adding a vowel suffix, you add a consonant suffix, we don't change anything. You just add your consonant suffix. So install will become installment with one L. Any other L-ended words, there's no change. Okay? The change only happens when your word ends with a single vowel plus an L. And then you add a vowel suffix. That's the only change. Any other situations like cool, cool doesn't end with a single vowel. Cool ends with a double vowel because we've got two O's, two vowels. Snarl doesn't end with a vowel followed by a L. It ends with a consonant followed by a L. So you just add the suffix. Snarling, snarled, snarls. Now, just a quick word regarding install. Install, is it written with one L or two L's? How would you write it yourself? I need to install this application on my computer. When I say I need to install this application on my computer, do you use one L or do you use two L's? The answer to that question is, well, both are acceptable. You can write it with one L and you can write it with two L's. Now, the difference between these two is in the past, there was a clear cut between the American spelling, which is two L's, and the British spelling, which is one L. So in the past, install in British spelling was just one L. But then with the advent of technology, the American spelling of two L's actually influenced our way of spelling that word. So we found more and more install in British spelling with two L's. If you look in the dictionary, it will give you the two forms. So install here is a word whose spelling has been influenced by the American spelling due to technology, because before computers, we did not really use install a lot. But with computers, the word install started to be used more and more often. If you had the suffix ly, ly, to a word ending with an L, then automatically you have two L's. So if you have loyal and you add li at the end, then you get loyally with 2 L's. Principle, principally with 2 L's, and so on and so on. Do remember that a word could have more than one suffix. Like you have with the word faith, you can use full at the end, faithful, but then you could add ly at the end of faithful. So faithfully. And you will see that if you add ly to faithful, you end up with 2 L's at the end of faithfully. Faithfully. There is one exception that is not really an exception. It's the word oily. Oil. Oily is O-I-L-Y. Now, why am I saying it's not really an exception? It's because what we added at the end of oily is not the suffix ly. It's not li. We didn't add li to all. We had the suffix y. Remember, earlier I mentioned the suffix y in relation to messy, icy, sleepy, if you remember. So y, the letter y could be a suffix, and that's actually what we added to oil. Now, any words ending in w, x, y, or in a double consonant, they never double the final letter. So you just add a suffix. Doesn't matter if it is a vowel suffix or a consonant suffix, just add the suffix. For example, W ending word, mow, M-O-W, mowing, mowed. X ended word, tax, taxing, taxed. A double consonant ending, like pick, ends with CK, 2 consonants. Pick, picking, picked. Just add the suffix. I've got another 3 things to add, another 3 points to add. What happens if you add a suffix OUS at the end of nouns ending in OUR? Like humor. Humor, if you add OUS at the end, what happens? Well, the U is dropped in humor. It becomes humorous, O-R-O-U-S. Something with vigor. Vigorous, G-O-R-U-S. So that's one thing to remember. Another one is words ending in IE. What happens with words ending in IE? When you add the suffix ing at the end of it. If you add the suffix ing at the end of it, the IE becomes a Y. That's a bit different from earlier when we had a Y changes to IES or to an I. Here it's the opposite. So tie, for example, TIE ends in IE. If you add ing at the end of tie, it becomes tying. TY ing. Same with lie, lying, ly. Die, dying, dy. So IE here changes to a Y when you add ing at the end. We do have one exception, and that's with tie. If you add ed, tied, T-I-E-D. The other point, the third point, is what happens with words ending in C when you add a suffix that starts with either A, I, or Y. The ending ends with a K, CK. For example, panic. Panic, IC at the end. But if you add ed, panicked, we need a K, CK-ED. Or panicking, CK-ING. Or panicky, CKY. Something with picnic. There is a very good reason as to why we need a K there for these words. And that's because of the pronunciation. What happens if you don't have a K in panicked? How would you say that word? Or in panicking? If you don't have a K in the word panicking, then you would read that word panicing. Because a CI is a S sound. A CE is a S sound as well. A CY is a S sound. So to get a K sound, we add the letter K. To say that it's not panicing, it is panicking. It's not panici, it is panicky. So that is a very good reason why we need a K here for these words ending in a C. Just want to say something quickly regarding the suffix able, because people tend to confuse sometimes the suffix able with able. Is it able or is it able? When is it able? When is it able? Good question, and difficult to give you an answer here. Apparently, words ending in able are of Latin origin. although it's not the case, because dependable is able, and dependable is of Latin origin as well, but when you say an able word, it's usually Latin origin. But you do have Latin origin words ending with able as well. Now there are about 180 words that ends with the suffix able. 180 words with the suffix able at the end. There is a rule of thumb which is not very precise because we have words that don't follow that pattern, but it could help to spell some words if you're not sure if it is able or able. The rule of thumb is if you remove able from a word and you are left with a complete word, then the suffix would probably be able. But what happens with able words? If you remove able from sensible, we get sense, S-E-N-S. And sense, S-E-N-S is not a complete word. I mean, there is a word sense with an E at the end, S-E-N-S-E, but in sensible we don't have an E, it's just S-E-N-S. Same thing with illegible. If you remove able from illegible, then you end up with illeg. And illeg is not a complete word either. But as I say, it's not a foolproof rule because there are a few exceptions, as in accessible, contemptible, digestible, flexible, or even suggestible, among some others. So it's a hard one, this one. You either know or you don't know. That's something you need to check. Now, you may have noticed that the spelling changes usually when we add a vowel suffix to these words. Vowel suffix, you have to be careful. So when you add a vowel suffix, sometimes you need to double the final letter and other times you don't. So that's something to keep in mind. With a consonant vowel, usually we don't have that problem, you just add it. Usually, but not always. Knowing about suffixes, knowing about prefixes do help with the spelling. If you're not sure how to spell a word, think about the main word. What is the main word of that word? So unthinkable, it was think. Then in unthinkable, well, we added able at the end, and we added un at the beginning, and that gave us our word. I hope you have found this video useful and that it will help you with your spelling.